Welcome to Improv for the Podcast. On this week's episode, we'll hear from Benjamin Roth about his improvisational journey, play a couple games, and most importantly, learn how he improved his life. Let's hit it. Welcome to Improv for the Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Lee Evans, and today I am joined by the incredibly talented improviser, wise teacher, and quality human being, Benjamin Roth. Benjamin Roth, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Michael. It feels really good to be here. A busy day at work and stuff right before this, but I'm glad I could make it.
Well, good news for you. We actually have your boss on the line. He's going to chime in and just give us some feedback about your performance lately, assign you a couple projects. So that's how we're going to start the podcast today.
Perfect. Great. I feel like I really crushed this last project. So, I mean, it shouldn't be anything but good news.
Fantastic. Wow. Okay. Benjamin Roth, quality employee. So Benjamin, tell me a little bit about yourself. What's your role here at Improv for the People? How long have you been involved?
So right now, I am a main company member and part of the faculty as a teacher here at the studio. And I've been with the studio since probably 2015, 2016.
Wow.
When I started out as a student. And pretty much just took classes as a beginner and have just stuck with it. And eventually I talked to Matt and was like, you know what? I want to teach. I want to give it back.
Wow, that's fantastic. Okay, so Benjamin has been around for the long haul. And I definitely want to dig into that because I feel like there's been such an evolution in IFTP, and I only know a few moments within its history. So we're gonna dig into that a little more and understand like how you got started and how it's changed over time and how it's changed you over time as well.
Yeah,
definitely curious to hear more about that, but it'll have to wait because, as always, as tradition here on Improv for the Podcast, we have to play a couple rounds of three things. So Benjamin, are you ready to list some things for me?
Yes.
Fantastic. And I'm assuming you know how this game is played. Amazing. All right. So for those of you at home, just if you might not know, I'm going to be giving Benjamin three different categories. And in each of those categories, he'll have to list three things. But as always on Improv for the Podcast, it's personal. Yep, that's right. I've done some detective work. I know every single detail about Benjamin's life. Social security, mother's maiden name, fingerprints, you know, all the good stuff.
What are my fingerprints?
You have them.
You did your homework.
I did. Not to brag. All right, here we go. So these are three things. Things you eat cold.
Ice cream.
1.
Yogurt.
2.
Chocolate.
3. These are three things. Very nice. Best Overwatch characters.
Brigitte.
1.
Zenyatta.
2.
May.
3. These are three things and good choices. Finally, favorite video game projects you have personally worked on.
State of Decay 2.
1. Oh, yeah.
Starfield.
2.
Crash Bandicoot.
3. These are three things that hopefully don't violate any NDAs. Very nice. All right. Well done. Thank you for jumping on that. I have a lot of questions. So your first answer, foods that are cold. The first thing you said was ice cream. Now, Benjamin, tell me, what is your favorite type of ice cream?
I really love ice cream. I really love chocolate. Hence my third answer for a cold thing. But I really love chocolate, especially like Moose Tracks or like, you know, something that has like chocolate within chocolate with like fudge chocolate. So it's like, if it's like multi-chocolate going on, like I'm all about it.
Yeah. I'm into that too. Just like various types of chocolate all layered together.
Yeah.
That's something interesting there. Okay. All right. My second category was Overwatch characters. And, I have to agree. Those are three characters I quite enjoy playing as, that I let my team, you know, they carry me and then I can just play as whoever I like. Oh man. So yeah, Brigitte, who is fantastic, but Reinhardt's daughter, right?
Torbjorn's daughter.
Whoa. Why did I think Reinhardt? I'm not sure.
She's like, Reinhardt's like her mentor.
Right. Because they both have
the whole shield thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. She's like a hybrid between the two, I guess.
Yeah.
Because she gives out armor. She has a little shield. Okay. And our listeners are huge Overwatch fans. So
I would imagine they are.
we're going to get into the meta, Overwatch 2. We're going to talk microtransactions tonight, monetization within video games, games as a service,
perfect.
all
Can't
that
wait.
stuff. I'm trying to think of more buzzwords.
Loot boxes.
That
no longer
there you go.
exist.
True. Yeah. Rest in peace. That was my favorite way to let rich people get richer, but no more. Rest in peace. I do got to say, a glaring error perhaps in your list is that you didn't include Reinhardt, actually.
Oh.
Personally. Big fan.
I had my moments with Reinhardt.
Okay.
He's kind of hard for me to play because I feel like I like to charge in there, and then I just die real quickly. So I like kind of playing more defensive. I like playing healers for the most part. And those that can, even though Brigitte is, more frontline, I think she's kind of cute. So
Yeah. Fair points. Would you say of healers, is Zenyatta, would you say your favorite?
I would probably say Mercy is probably my favorite.
I mean, yeah.
But I enjoy Zenyatta's both offensive and defensive play styles.
More of a mix and can kind of shift back and forth. Okay. I respect that. I like Zenyatta. I'm terrible at healing, but at least Zenyatta, I can feel like I'm making some sort of impact.
Right. That's what's great about being a healer is like, you feel like you're still contributing even if you don't get any kills.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get kills as Mercy. Kudos to Battle Mercy players.
Yeah.
And those of you who don't know what a Battle Mercy is, it is a Mercy character that is really offensive and uses their secondary pistol.
Yeah.
A lot.
And like successfully. Yeah. Which I've never done. But, for those of you who can, good for you. All right. So moving to that last category. Projects you've worked on. Now, we'll probably get into this a little bit, just kind of talking about later in the episode, getting into how improv has maybe affected your life outside of the studio. But I know you have worked in like the video game industry. You've done a lot of motion capture stuff. I imagine maybe 3D modeling as well, things like that. If you want to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah. I've actually have not really done anything with motion capture.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of what I do is actually being in like early versions of the games and like actually playing the games.
Oh, okay.
And then like we have special tools that allow us to, sort of like cheat codes, give us God mode or infinite ammo and types of things like that. And I go in and we can like, detach the camera and like fly a virtual camera around the game space and create cinematic shots to showcase the game.
Okay. Yeah. So like for media and marketing materials, things like that, trailers.
Yeah. It's all mostly trailers or like TV spots, things on like Instagram or yeah.
Anything to help like be like, man, this game is beautiful. Look at this scene. Look at this moment. Like, look at this action right here.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really cool. So you're like playing within the playground that's created by the developers.
Yeah. And it's interesting because a lot of the games when we're working on them, they're not done yet too. So it's like the games might have some bugs still and are still being polished. So it's like, hey, you can only shoot in this one corner of the game because that's the only corner that works and is finished. Good luck.
Please don't expose this.
Right. Yeah.
All right. I got a video game question. What is your favorite engine to work in and what's your least favorite engine to work in?
What's interesting is because a lot of companies have their own like unique engines. I don't want to go into the specifics, like naming the engine for NDA purposes, but I appreciate an engine that definitely has like a lot of functionality when it comes to like camera tools. So like, being able to adjust depth of field or like being able to like adjust the lighting or, being able to manipulate, how fast the like camera moves, whether it's, I can like Dutch the camera or, speed it up or slow it down and how that's all mapped out onto a controller, which is usually what we use. We hook it up like a second controller to control the camera. But then there are some games like a big engine is the Unreal Engine, which is pretty standard.
Yeah. Shout out Fortnite.
But I think, certain companies can like develop it in their own way to like suit their needs. But like that game or that engine has a very basic camera system. So it's like it's very limiting. So when a game engine comes around that has really robust tools, it's a blessing.
Yeah, it empowers you as the creator, right? You're like, I can make your game look better if I have the tools I need as a creator.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which, I mean, that totally makes sense. It's like, are you giving me basic equipment or are you giving me some advanced stuff?
Yeah. And it's interesting too. And like, that's what I kind of enjoy about it is like the constraints. So it's like not every game is made the same way or has the same tools. So you need to kind of learn like what tools are available, like trying to create the best thing that you can with the limited resources.
Got it. I like that. Yeah. Because I feel like sometimes, and this is my opinion, is like sometimes if you have constraints that can actually push you to create something better than if you had no constraints at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think, what's so interesting about, this or like working in like games for like advertising is like, it's very similar to like live action trailers, but what's interesting is like the editors, they have like the dailies and like all the footage that they've shot for the movie, and they have to make all of that work unless of course they go back and do reshoots, which, takes time and money. Whereas for us, we generate everything. So it's like, if we create a scene and like, we're not having like the right amount of coverage, or we would really love an insert of this one character doing this, whatever, we can go back and do that. So it's like, there are more possibilities in terms of what we can create, and we can like keep iterating on things over and over again too, which kind of like, it's both a gift and also a curse.
Yeah. Because it's like the work is never done.
Right.
You're like, there's always a little more we could tweak, but you have to finish your projects at some point, right? Turn things in.
Yeah.
It reminds me of a quote, and I may have referenced this on another podcast, but it's such a good quote because it's applicable, I think, to your work, because it's, it's like you're creating a film almost, right? In that aspect. And I was watching the Star Wars Episode 1 Phantom Menace special features. Everyone should check them out for that, movie that came out 20 plus years ago. But I think it was one of the producers. He has this line, or it might have been a special effects supervisor. He says, a film is never finished, it escapes, which I think that is often so true with many creative projects, right? Because it's more like you have a deadline and you get as much done as you can. And then at some point you have to let it go and be like, it's pretty good, but there's always more I might want to add or change or modify.
It's a really interesting quote, and like in seeing it as escaping, as if it's like the art itself had developed its own sentient consciousness to leave, but it's really, like to create, like whether it's the outside pressures to like let it go, or like, what, you need to deliver it now. But I would say it's, really like on the artist to be like, okay, like it's time to let this go and be experienced. That's what I enjoy about being like a creator, is like I enjoy sharing what I make with people and like kind of seeing how it impacts them, how they react to it.
Yeah, I definitely agree, because at some point, like your opinion can only matter so much about your own project, and you want that feedback and that reaction response from everyone else, right? You want to be able to see.
That feedback feels good.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't know about that, but I'm glad it does for you. All right. Well, you ready to jump into some improv?
Let's do it.
All right. Thank you for sharing about your career a little bit too, because I mean, we could do a whole podcast talking about that, because I think the video games industry is just something that's fascinating, and there's so many aspects of it that I think people don't realize, and I think often like the work that you do is something that people don't even know about and could go for some education on,
Oh yeah. Especially since video games can get kind of a bad rep at times.
Sure. So. Yeah. And I think, well, I'm of this opinion that video games are art, and I know some people don't agree, but I am very much of that opinion, and I will die on that hill.
That's another podcast right there.
Yes, that is another podcast, but yes, there's some video games, I don't know, they're pretty bad art, but others, masterpieces. But anyway, that's besides the point. We're here, Benjamin, to talk improv. I want to know your history, your story with it. So what we're going to do is we're going to start at the very beginning. I want you to tell me the first time you learned what improv was. Not even did it, just like you heard the word, maybe you saw it. What did that look like for you?
For me, my first experience with improv, and I would imagine that like growing up, people around my age, probably have the same experience of watching Whose Line Is It Anyway.
Oh yeah.
I would imagine have a lot of people giving you that answer as like a first time.
I would say probably about 70% of episodes thus far that have been recorded, but which goes to show its influence, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, it's like there wasn't really. Of course, you had like live comedy before that, but like for an improv show, it's probably not as well known as like scripted theater or like stand-up comedy. You don't really see it broadcast. You don't really see improv shows broadcasted that often
100%.
because of its nature.
Yeah.
So for that, seeing those guys up there or on that show is just it was just very inspiring. And like I just remember like always just like laughing and like watching it with my family.
Yep. I remember the first time, my parents introduced it. I was like, I don't know what this is, but this might be better than anything else I've ever seen on TV. Yeah. I mean, we were also watching like Extreme Home Makeover at the time, but things like that. So how old were you when you first started watching Whose Line?
I was probably like 10 or 12 maybe.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not great at remembering the age numbers. I'm like, you could say like maybe third, fourth grade, maybe. Like I can remember that my childhood via like the grade level more so than like the age.
I mean, I feel like that's the best way to anchor it. You're like, in fourth grade, this happened, which is, I mean, that tells us enough, we can generally know what age you were in fourth grade.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so you discovered Whose Line sometime third, fourth grade, maybe 10 to 12 years old, somewhere in that range. Yeah. And from that point forward, were you involved? Like, were you performing? Were you doing theater as a kid? Any sort of like performances, or was that not really your wheelhouse?
My older brother and I would make, short films. Like he kind of learned like videography and filmmaking and that. So he and I would, kind of make little short films around the house, and I would make videos for school projects. So that kind of like, and I would usually be in them as well. But I definitely liked the behind the scenes stuff more. And so I kind of did that throughout middle school and, got really good at that kind of like video production stuff. And then in high school, I became involved in the drama department doing stage crew. And then I found out and I'd taken an intro to drama class as well, my freshman year. Then I found out that the drama department had improv nights. And so, yeah. And so that was like my first experience, like both from the drama class and the improv nights, so like kind of really getting the sense for live theater and like actually kind of being involved in that. And I did like performing, but I was definitely nervous about it. Like it always found myself like getting anxious and about like prepping for it and like not wanting to memorize lines or things like that.
Yeah. All the struggles that come with like live performance generally, like plays, and especially in high school. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was definitely like pretty nervous too around just like public speaking and just like being in front of like a lot of people. I was not super comfortable with. So I was always like more drawn to being behind the scenes than actually being the one up front. But once when I started doing like the improv nights, like, and I kind of kept doing them. Like I was like, this is a lot of fun. Like this, just to like play and be silly and goofy like that. I was like, it was a real joy.
So what did that jump look like? So you were in high school, you're taking this intro to drama class. You heard about like these improv nights that they had. What kind of pushed you? You're like, you know what? I'm going to go check out improv night. Was it like, I'm going to be the future Colin Mockery? Or was it just like, screw it. Like, let's go do it.
I think it was definitely more of the screw it. Let's just go and watch. I think like in being involved in the drama department and like having a lot of my friends were the ones that were actually performing. So like kind of getting like just like watching them and seeing how much fun that they were having, getting into characters and things like that. And I just kind of, from what I remember, I just felt like it just looked like a lot of fun. Like they're just having a lot of fun, and like, and there was that part of myself that does enjoy performing for others and making other people laugh that I wanted to lean into more of. But it was definitely like, there was definitely a lot of fear around it for sure. It's just like, I was scared, but also like, you know what? I just want to do it.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Just, you're like, you know what? I'm going to show up. So how long from when you first went to one of those improv nights? Were you just an audience member the first time?
I think so. It's all pretty blurry.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to say I probably like went to the first one and just watched just to kind of get a feel for it.
Yeah. What is this?
Yeah. What is this? Like, how does this work? They're just making it all up off the top of their heads. Like, so, I mean, it was just very much like the show, and they were playing games like Whose Line Is It Anyway? And, but yeah, I think, and I think in just getting, because I didn't really know a whole lot of the people like in the department. So it was like it was a new group of people that I was meeting for the first time. So there were those like social jitters of getting to know those people, to feel comfortable like getting up there and doing improv with them.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big leap too. You're already putting yourself out there by attending, and then you're surrounded by, like, you're like, I don't know any of these people.
Right.
Like, that's a lot, especially in high school. I mean, it's easier as an adult sometimes to have that courage, but as a high schooler, whew, I salute thee for that.
Thanks.
Okay, so you started attending. How long, or maybe not how long, but when was the first time you got up on stage with them during those improv nights? How was that?
You know, when I first went, I think that was like my freshman year. I don't know how much I went up and performed that first year. The memories that are kind of coming to me as I think about it, I remember more. So it might have been like my sophomore year was when I really kind of got up the courage to perform. And like, as I was becoming more friendly and like knew the other, people and like the other kids that were like a year or so above me. And so I think like, as I started to bond more with them, I felt more comfortable and like more desire to like go up and like, perform.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. Yeah. You had to kind of like build your own little niche in there, and you're like, okay, I know people now. Like, I've got people older than me that I can kind of look up to, or they can look out for me, or vice versa. So then, yeah, kind of like, as soon as you kind of found your little community, you were able to like step up in that.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. I mean, yeah, man, sophomore in high school doing improv. That's awesome. So, okay. So you're a sophomore in high school, you're doing improv. Mm-hmm. What did that look like? That first show, maybe your first couple shows, or just that first whole year?
Yeah. Oh man. It's honestly been like, I haven't really thought about it like that much lately, because it's just like, I mean, granted, high school in and of itself is just like a blip. I mean, and being involved in like drama department, you know, doing a play in the fall and then doing a musical in the spring.
Yeah. You were busy.
So busy. So it was like, I wish that I could have dedicated more time to improv there. So it was definitely like more of like an afterthought. Like it wasn't like a priority, as much as it is like now.
Okay. So there was a shift.
There was definitely a shift. And it was like, and I never really saw myself as like, you know, wanting to like be on SNL or anything like that. It was definitely just like something that I enjoyed doing, you know, with my other drama department members, and like just like laughing and just kind of just like really just kind of just getting to be goofy for a little while and just like play some like fun games and just see what we could come up with, you know? I can't remember like how well, like the show, I want to say like the show went well. I don't recall being as critical of myself back then as I am now, being a teacher and, performing more. But yeah, no, it was, I'm glad that I got a taste for it then, because then I didn't pick it up again for, you know, at least like another, like maybe like 5 or 6 years.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, I see maybe like the role of improv in high school was, one, an opportunity to hang out with friends, just have fun. I imagine too, being involved in any sort of production, you want to blow off some steam every once in a while.
Oh yeah.
Those are stressful. Like, they just are musicals, plays, whatever. Like, it's just a stressful process through and through. So getting to do improv, I imagine you're just like, hey, friends, like, let's get in here. Let's go mess around and do some silly stuff on stage. It's pretty ideal.
And they also weren't necessarily shows like to the public. I think they were really just like, hey, the drama department is having a show. And like, you know, obviously I'm pretty sure like friend or like family and friends outside could come, but it wasn't like, you know, a public show at like a venue. It was like in our high school's black box theater.
Yeah, you were doing it for you rather
Right.
than anyone else, which I think is very admirable. It's just like, we just love showing up and doing this every week. You can come if you want. We're going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think is the right attitude to have about it in high school, because that high school improv can get interesting. That's all I'm going to say on that. But that seems very pure to me. Yeah, just for the sake of, hey, we're having fun. We're getting up on stage, just messing around, making things up, and just, yeah, doing it for the heck of it.
Yeah. Well, and I think, you know, what you said, I feel like this will probably be something that comes up later too, but just like having that space to like express, you know, especially in like high school when you're still like, you know, still figuring your life out.
Oh yeah, everything's brutal.
Everything's brutal. Just like social, like being social and relationships and all that kind of stuff. So it's like just to have that kind of time where, you know, like it's just, like you said, it's just very pure and fun and unfiltered. It's really just a gift.
Definitely. Okay. So you do improv through most of high school. You graduate high school, you go to college. Was there any improv during your college years, or was there a little bit of a hiatus, if you will?
There was zero improv in college.
Zero improv.
Yeah,
Man.
because I became too focused on getting a campus job.
Got it.
To start earning some money.
I understand.
And it's funny, like I had actually, my like freshman year, I had initially gone to like the theater department to like look into doing stage crew, because I just enjoyed that community.
Yeah, it's a great
in
way
high
to
school.
get plugged in.
And I remember going to like maybe like 1 or 2 sessions of their like build crew. And then it just, I don't remember if I just didn't really jive with them, or maybe just like the thought of like having or like earning money just seemed more appealing to me.
Yeah.
I think it was that one. And then that just kind of became my focus for my time at college. Like I hadn't even thought once about like looking for improv or anything like that. It just didn't come up. I just mainly hung out with other like filmmaking students or
film department guy.
Or the people that I worked with.
Yeah, and I think the unfortunate part of college is that I was an acting major. So I think what's unfortunate is that college becomes a lot more segmented than something like high school, where like you can get anyone in the room to join something. But college, you know, it's like, well, you have to be this major to be involved with this. And, you know, like every department, you know, even within like a college of the arts, you know, there's film, there's theater, and, you know, there's visual arts, performing arts, all that stuff. Like it's harder for like cross-curricular. Like it's hard to be involved in cross-curricular activities. Like if you're not majoring in that thing, it's hard to get involved with another department.
For sure. Yeah. There was definitely, I mean, I was thankful because I worked in my campus's student center. So like I was constantly surrounded by like other groups and organizations.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, but improv or like cause I'm pretty sure there was like a comedy group. I don't remember what it was called exactly, but that was at my school, Temple University. Shout out to Temple Owls. But yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. Like they're just depending on the crowd that you kind of spent your time with, like, you're just not, you know, get introduced or like, so we're like experienced to those other things.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. And especially like, you're like, well, I got a job. I got to focus on that because I need money. And then you were probably very focused on your work as a film major. I mean, that's a whole other deal in and of itself. Like just all that it takes to be a film major. I remember I had a lot of friends who were film majors, and they'd be struggling at times. Yeah. So that was kind of, I feel like, I mean, that's a huge creative output to have during college, you know? From high school, you were involved in stage crew, doing improv, and whatever, like all the other things you were involved in high school. And then college, you just turn your focus to film, which I think is really cool. And I think there's a part of me that was like, maybe I could have been a film major instead of an acting major, but I'll never know. And I'm not going to regret it, but there's a small part of me, that would want to explore it sometime. Okay, so you graduate Temple University, Owls. And what happens after that?
What happens after that is I basically moved straight out to Los Angeles.
All right.
Because I had done like a study away program my final semester at Temple in LA. And I just, really enjoyed the vibe of like the city and just like the newness of it and like the weather, obviously. And I just knew that like New York wasn't really the place I wanted to go. I knew I had to go to either New York or LA.
Yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
Kind of meeting people here and just kind of getting a taste for it. Just like, you know what, I need to go back. So pretty much a month after I graduated, I packed up my stuff and I drove out.
Wow. And you had all that money saved from your campus jobs, right?
Exactly.
Hey, there it is. See, it ended up paying off later.
And it worked out too, because I lived, the first place I moved to when I lived in Burbank, I lived in like a ranch house with like 9 other people.
Oh my gosh.
And I shared a bedroom too.
Yeah.
So like my rent was dirt cheap.
Yep.
Dirt cheap. So like
That's
it was kind of helpful to kind of have that for the first like year and a half that I was just starting out here, to kind of not lose all my money right away and kind of just get my footing.
Definitely. Yeah. I remember my rent, I think like right out of college, it was cheap because I shared a room and it was like maybe like $400 a month, which I would do a lot to pay that again.
Right.
No, because it's not $400 a month anymore. I'll tell you that. And
I
imagine yours also wasn't $400 a month.
It was pretty cheap.
Yeah. And the small part of me that misses that.
I do miss that. I can't say that I miss having a roommate though.
Yeah.
Don't miss that.
Oh yeah. I remember that first apartment out of college. It's kind of a roach motel. So we lived in it my senior year as well, but
it feels like the rite of passage though for like living out on your own in like a new place, like just living in a dump.
Yeah.
And this place wasn't a dump. I mean, it had character. It had character. It's seen some shit.
Yeah.
But it was cozy and it was nice to live with a bunch of people too. So it's like you're never really alone.
It's kind of fun too, and it helps kind of keep that college feel coming out of college, because I think that's a big adjustment period for people, because you're suddenly not just around your friends, like generally in proximity all the time.
Right. We're just like with like your students, you're like classmates,
Yep. You're like, oh yeah, guys, I gotta go to my seminar tonight. Like, whatever. Except that all changes. It's like, y'all gotta go to your minimum wage jobs.
Yeah.
Whatever. Okay. So you graduate college. You move to Burbank, living in a ranch house with 9 people.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. So out of college, were you like jumping right into the film industry? Were you just finding whatever job you could get to kind of make it work? What did that look like?
Thankfully, I mean, I pretty much jumped straight back into film.
Awesome.
And I was just basically just working on set, for like the first year and a half.
Like PA stuff?
PA stuff,
Yeah.
art department, working, on like bigger like indie movies, the occasional kind of commercial, like YouTube thing. That was a lot of fun. Just like getting to be on set. Like it still had that same kind of like family feel as like working on like stage crew. Just like you're all working long hours to get make this one thing happen. So those were some good times.
That's awesome.
On set.
Yeah, and just able to get like right into it as soon as you moved. Because I think for some people that can be a huge challenge, is just breaking in, even in a PA position. Because it's like you got to know someone or have connections. You can't just roll up and be like, I say, son, I want to be a PA. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah. Well, and then you also have to be good and like people want to work with you again too, which I think is the other like big thing. Like if you do a not so great job or don't have a great attitude as a PA, then it's like you're gonna struggle to find more work. Yeah.
It's like every moment can be a reflection on your next job opportunity.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, hey, yeah, I noticed that guy, Benjamin, he spit in my coffee. I don't think you should bring him back for season 2 or, whatever that was.
Just to make it clear, I never spit in someone's coffee, just to Just for the listeners at home.
That one's for the video watchers. Bad radio. Yeah, no, that would shock me if you did that. You are not that kind of person. But are you? No. All right. So we're working in film. We're being a PA, jumping from project to project. How long until, getting into your new film career do you discover or get back into improv?
So it was probably, I was working in film, and then I got a job in advertising.
Okay.
I started off as an office PA, and then that's where I found out about video game trailers. So then I got kind of brought into the department as it was kind of going through some changes and and growing again. And so once when I started doing that was when, I don't know, I was probably doing that for at least half a year or so, was when I was starting to kind of get burned out. Because video games have always kind of been my outlet, after school or, just to chill or outside of watching movies.
Yeah, I can relate.
And then the moment I started working for them, the last thing I wanted to do was go home and play more video games.
Because it's just like work.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this was also around the same time too, that I started to do more kind of inner work on myself. And so it's the idea of playing video games for hours on end, just wasn't as appealing to me anymore. I was I want to get out there. I want to be doing things. I want to be meeting people. I want to be in a relationship. And just it felt like video games outside of work were just kind of an obstacle to getting those things.
It's they were your work and they were just taking up your time that you could spend doing other things if you wanted.
Right. Yeah. And I was in advertising, kind of getting burned out, looking for a new outlet. And then I was at the same time, I was also dating someone that was wanted to do stand up and improv. And I went to some of her improv shows. And that was when it all came back to me, Whose Line and, doing the drama department, improv nights. I was just I want to do that again.
Yeah.
That was seeing her shows reminded me how much fun it was.
Yeah. You're I can get up there. I've done this before.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And just seeing her doing it and just playing, I was oh yeah, I remember that being a lot of fun and just kind of the freedom in it. And so I was okay, I'm gonna go look for some improv classes.
So shout out whoever that lady was for getting Benjamin back into improv. So what was your action plan, or how did you okay, I'm in LA. I saw some improv shows. I want to get back involved because I used to do this in high school. How did you go about that search process? What did that look like?
So at the time I was living in Mid-City.
Okay.
And I remember looking up improv studios, and there was one that was literally right down the street from me.
Ooh, we
and
love
it was
convenience.
Improv for the People.
Whoa.
Yep.
That's where we are right now.
That's where we are right now. However,
you've been in this room since then?
No.
Oh, okay.
Because the studio used to be at a theater on Washington. Kind of over in Mid-City, kind of near the, I think it's near the 10, Fairfax, Washington area.
Okay. Yeah.
So it was in a dumpy little theater. It wasn't a dump. I just said that because it was it's a nice adjective.
Even dumps would call it a dump. I've never seen it.
It had character. There you go. It was intimate. It's definitely not like what we have here at the Pico, but
sure.
I signed up for my first classes there, and yeah, it was just a lot of fun. Just kind of stuck with it. And the first class, super, super nervous. And then, I was just I just kind of want to keep doing this because it is a lot of fun. And I want to keep growing and learning more about it, and just want to get good.
And what year was that when you started taking classes at IFTP?
I think it was 2015.
2015.
Mid 2015. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Okay, so you started taking classes there. Who was your first teacher that you had at IFTP?
My first teacher, the teacher I had for my audit class name was Brian Nelson.
Brian Nelson. Shout out B. Nels.
Shout out to Brian.
I know nothing
Thank you,
about
Brian. And then after that class, Ava Abdullah, who is back again teaching with us.
Future friend of the show.
And yeah, so she was my teacher. And so I had her for quite a while until I eventually kind of moved up to Matt's class.
Okay, so Brian Nelson to Ava to Matthew Moore, our founder, our hero, our leader. Okay, wow, that's really cool. Okay, and that you started in Ava's class too. I didn't know that Ava had been teaching here that long. That's crazy. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's
That's amazing.
it was super interesting to me because it's like whenever I go into just like any class, even in like school or like whatever, like even now as like an adult, it's like whenever I'm like being taught, I don't know what it is, but it's just like I feel like that the instructor always has to be older than me.
Yeah.
And so it's like when I learned that Ava was younger than me, it just blew my mind because I was just like, I just assumed you were older than me because you're teaching me. Because you're teaching me.
You're my teacher, therefore you are older.
Yeah. Therefore you are wise. You know more than me.
Yeah. That totally makes sense. Yeah.
But yeah, no, like, I mean, finding that out, that didn't like bother me or change, my experience in class or anything like that. But it's just an interesting observation.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I think that's something that changes like as you become an adult and as you get older. Suddenly, sometimes teachers you have are younger than you, and that can be hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah,
And, I know I've had that a couple times, and I'm like, okay, like that. It makes me feel a little wheezy, but then I get over it because that's just me being dumb. But that's a whole other issue. Okay, so you started at IFTP, and clearly at some point there was a shift, right? You went from student, you were coming to classes for a certain period of time. Were you in shows, or was there a moment you remember where you were invited to be in a show here at IFTP?
I mean, we definitely did. I definitely did shows while we were still at that theater, and they. Yeah, I wish I could remember them like specifically. But honestly, like I feel like the big shift for me came, and it might have been around the time like before the theater moved from Washington to Pico. Was just that like after kind of both like going through classes and also like a lot of the stuff I was doing like outside of work on myself, really just kind of like it was just resonating with me that I wanted to, give this back because I noticed myself like becoming more expressive and feeling, I guess, just lighter just in general. It's like just kind of feeling more like open and like being more courageous and like doing things that scare me or like, and are they just kind of being okay with the unknown, I was a very like kind of like anxious kid, still am now a little bit, but like I was definitely very anxious and nervous growing up. And so to be able to just look uncertainty like in the face, like week after week after week, it's just like, it was such a gift. And, and just like talking about it with Matt and just kind of noticing the impact it had on me, I was just like, I think it'd be really great to just like give this back and like provide that kind of space and opportunity for other people.
Oh, that's awesome. So how long into your improv journey did you come to that realization? Or like, I've been a student for a while now and I've changed as a human, like, like you said, being able to kind of embrace that unknown, which is not easy to do. And I know something I think that I struggle with sometimes as well, that anxiety you get trying to anticipate and worry about what could happen.
Right.
So how long into your IFTP journey was that?
That was, I would say about like maybe like 2 years or so. Cause I think I started teaching around like 2017, 2018.
Okay. Yeah. So about 2 years in. Wow. Yeah. Okay. And what did that look like? Was that something that you brought up to Matt or did someone ask you? How did that kind of shift? You're like, okay, I've been here a while. This is what I think. This is what I realized. You had some reflection. So what did that look like?
That looked like, from what I remember, I think it was just me approaching Matt and just being like, hey, what's the process looking like to become a teacher? And to, just, I mean, I didn't really have a lot like in mind of it, like, but I was just kind of following this sense of just like, this has made a big impact in my life. And I think what's so great about this studio is like its openness to, people from all walks of life, people that are different careers and people that, don't want to be comedians necessarily or, be on SNL. Like, I think it's great that it is much more accessible to all people. And there's just something nice about connecting with people, like different people in that way, and not so much like it doesn't feel competitive or like, everyone needs to be on the same trajectory. So like, just that potential for that to like be in that space and just like meet different people was just, very exciting to me. And I was just like, hey, like I'm interested in like, wanting to give this back to people because it's made a big impact on me. And if I can help people, to feel more expressive and just feel more play and fun in their lives, like, why wouldn't I want to do that?
Yeah, 100%. Because you're like, hey, I know what this can do for me. I want to help other people get to the same place, which I think is amazing. And I think shows the uniqueness of this studio, right? Because like you said, this isn't we're not an SNL factory, and that's okay. And, I always think of it as like people can come here with different goals related to improv. Just because not everyone has the same goal about improv doesn't mean you can't get whatever goal that it is you have. If you just want to come here and, you want to do improv to kind of help you be more expressive, help you be a better collaborator, help you be a better teammate, right? A better partner. You can come here and do that. But if you also want to come here and legitimately work on your comedy chops, you can do that too. Like, yeah, it's a place and a space for all those types of things, right? We can all come together with different objectives in what we do. And I think there's room for all of that, within these doors and within these classrooms. And that is one thing I've always loved about coming here, ever since, my first class when I walked in. So knowing, and you're a part of that, like me being like a later generation IFTPer, like you're one of the people who's kind of helped build it into what it is now, and like for people like me who go, what's this on the internet? And, finding it and rolling up and trying these different classes, like I can see that very much so, and that you've helped to build that
Thank you.
Community that we have here now, which is really cool. So you've been a teacher here for about 4 years then. I know there was some pandemic mixed in there too, which is, well, it's the pandemic. Was it difficult for you kind of shifting from being a student to being a teacher? You might have had to teach some people who were your classmates previously, which can be hard, I think.
Yeah. Or even then, experiencing the flip side of teaching people that are older than me.
Yeah. Like you're like, oh, now I'm doing that thing.
Now I'm that doing guy. That thing. Yeah. They're the one that's seeing me as like, who is this young guy? Yeah. I would say the hardest part for me about transitioning from a student to a teacher was just, kind of feeling confident in what I knew, what I was talking about. And I, even to this day, still struggle with that, of like, do I need to have more classes? Do I need to like have an education? Do I need a degree in this to be worthy of teaching?
Yeah.
And also too, of just, being like, with being someone that like growing up, like was not very comfortable with like getting up and speaking in front of a lot of people, being up in front of, like 10 to 15 people for like 2.5 hours and like keeping the flow of the class going and like being able to like give feedback and, and just kind of lead the class in that way. Like that was definitely a stretch for me, and a stretch that, and like looking back on it, I'm like so grateful for, because it's, it takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of energy and work to just kind of be up there and be on, and, for something that is as, impermanent as improv, for it to just, be here and then just be gone, and then to be critical of it and talk about it, and then just have to let it go. Like it's not easy to make that transition and to hold that space in that way. But there is something that is also very energizing about it.
Yeah. And I think too, like you mentioned, the role of a teacher, particularly in an improv class, right? It's like you have to be so on, especially, because you got to observe every pair that comes up, or every group that comes up to do a scene or do an exercise, because like they're relying on you and you alone to kind of help guide them or shape or, correct if needed, whatever they bring to the table, which is, that is draining, 2.5 hours. You're like, pop, pop, pop. You're taking in every suggestion, every scene, every line, every movement, every piece of space work, whatever it is that you see up there. And it's like your job to be like, just absorb that all and, also be able to spit something out that's like understandable, which is not always easy. Cause I know I've definitely sometimes in instructional roles, I'm like, something I say, I'm like, okay, well that sucked. I'm like, well, okay. Feedback is it's a skill to give feedback that's meaningful and actionable, I think. And that's tough to do. So how do you think, yes, you've probably grown as a teacher from when you started to now. What do you think are some ways you've grown? Let's say maybe both as an improviser and as a teacher from when you started at IFTP and when you started as a teacher to now.
Let's see. Well, as a performer, I would say that I've definitely grown in definitely not being as afraid to make bigger, bolder choices. Just not being as self-conscious about what are other people thinking about me. And just kind of being able to just kind of go with the flow of things and kind of let things just kind of roll off and just kind of disappear if something doesn't, a scene or a character or joke that doesn't land. And just kind of being okay with kind of letting it go and moving on.
Yeah. There's always the next one.
There's always the next one for sure. And then as a teacher, I think the biggest way that I've grown is in learning to trust myself more in terms of, kind of like what I said earlier about feeling like I need to have more experience doing something.
Qualifications.
Right. And now just kind of at that place of trusting myself and knowing the, knowing all the improv tools and being able to give good, actionable feedback, I think is definitely very helpful. But I think, just being able to create that space where others feel safe to express themselves and to, make mistakes and to just try this art form that is so incredibly vulnerable that, it definitely just really gets you out of your comfort zone. It can just be really hard. And to be have someone that is just, really supportive and just open to whatever, you present. I don't know. I definitely see that as definitely one of my strengths is just being able to just kind of create that space where it's whatever you got, I'm gonna celebrate you.
Yeah. And I think that's a make or break thing, especially for new improvisers, the kind of environment that their teacher creates, because, there are some places you go and that initial environment you have is pretty cutthroat and pretty brutal. Not going to name names, but, and that can be really discouraging or disheartening to someone who's new to improv, who wants to try it out, because, oftentimes most people who start improv, when they start for the first time, you're going to suck a little bit. And that's the point. That's why you take a class. That's why you go and keep showing up, so that every time you can just suck a little less. And no matter how experienced you are, you're still going to suck sometimes. But the goal is that you suck a little less. That's how I think of it.
Or you enjoy sucking.
That's true too.
I think that's a big.
You can kind of bask in the suck.
That scene sucked and it was great.
Yeah. And I think that's definitely something that I guess not that I'm an improv elder, but I'd like to think I've been at this a little while now, and I want to continue to learn and get better at is kind of embracing the sucking and being like, well, that did suck. I kind of had fun sucking, but let's maybe not do that on the next one, and just kind of have a more positive attitude about it rather than like the harsh critical lens of like, you're terrible.
Yeah.
That's, for me, I think is a shift in mindset I've been working on.
Do you feel like, is that a mindset that is just related to improv, or is that something that you kind of have a mindset for other things in your life?
Oh, I've always been so critical of myself as a performer. I mean, and I know for me that just stems from like I've been in performing environments since I was like 5 years old. So, it's either like, hey, why didn't I get this part in this thing? And it's, that's a question that the director never answers. You have to kind of come up with the guesses yourself. You can't be like, hey, why didn't you cast me? Or why didn't you give me this role? Which is, that's one of the great mysteries of life always for the performer. So I think that's something for me, a mindset that I've dealt with my whole life. And, especially as a kid, that can be tougher because you have less perspective and, you're just not as aware of how things work.
Yeah.
And I think with improv in particular, it's definitely a room where I've learned to give myself more grace because improv can be a more forgiving art because you have more control as a performer of what you do, who you play, who you are on stage. And, that control is like, it's a great power that can hurt or like really make you fly. So I've grown to be better at that, but I'm far from perfect. I am still can be quite harsh on myself, and I continue to strive to beat myself up a little less every day.
It's a process.
Yeah.
Process for sure.
Is that something for you that you feel like you struggle with or have struggled with?
Oh yeah. I mean, and definitely like I feel like it's this way with like anything that you like want to take seriously or like put in a lot of like time and energy towards. Like you want to be, I don't want to say the word good, but just like effective or like, you want to produce quality, whatever it is, so it's like I want to be a good, solid improviser that is, able to like make an audience laugh with like every other line or whatever. And so, so like definitely like those moments where like, something doesn't land, or just like a scene just feels really clunky and like, just definitely turning that into like, oh man, like, why did I do that? Like, oh, I could have done this better. I, just started yelling at him and, could have made a different choice. But I think it's such a, like improv is like there's such a great parallel between it and like regular life in that we just, are just constantly making choices. And that we do like I love what you said about, us having the power to like choose, which is so important to do in a scene, but yet we still have that same power in our everyday lives. But I feel like, it's so easy to forget that. And we just like go at it. So we can just go at it so unconsciously at times.
Yeah, I think like you said, it's when we're not in the context of an improv scene, we forget the power that we have sometimes. So you're like, well, I'm not in class doing a goofy scene, so I don't have any power to choose anything, which is not true.
Yeah.
Because we make decisions every day, little ones and big ones.
What do you think that do you feel like that there's like a distinction that kind of draws like, well, why couldn't you bring the same level of like energy to like an everyday like interaction versus like an improv scene?
I think part of that is the stakes that come with real life, right? Like, I don't know, this is like such a work term, but like stakeholders, like in improv, oftentimes it's you and your scene partner and you live and die together, based off the choices the two of you make. And the greatest consequence in improv is that the scene might suck, right? But in life, the consequences are more dire, which is why I think we often feel limited in our choices because we go, well, if I choose this, I'm screwed or they're screwed or a bunch of people are screwed.
Yeah.
And, things are a little more cutthroat, which is unfortunate. And, that might also be something we put on ourselves as well, it's not always a reflection of reality, because there are probably choices I make every day that aren't as dire as I make them seem. But me being a human, I get things confused sometimes. Yeah. What about you? What do you think on that?
Yeah, honestly, it's been something that has just been like noodling around my brain for like so long now. Like I've like ever since I've had like just like noticed these like kind of parallels between like our everyday interactions and improv scenes. It's just like because I find in everyday interactions like I would say I'm more reserved. Like I'm not always like Mr. Curious in terms of like, asking questions about people or like just like wanting to know like, hey, what's going on in your life? Tell me your deep, dark secrets. But then it feels like such a different way of being than in like an improv scene where it's like things like, things have to matter. Like, things are exciting and, like yelling and playing and doing a voice. So it's such a big difference, but like, if you're like in a scene where you're talking to like your girlfriend or like like your partner, and it's like how can I bring this same level of like engagement and presence in a scene to like going on a date? And I think like what you said about like the stakes is like it's like a great thing because it's like I could be one way, but then like this person doesn't have to yes and it. They may want something else.
Yeah, they may no but you.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's really like, and we're talking about this like power of choice. It's like how we choose to respond to it. Am I going to see this as like, this person is not interested, or just like, what, this is just not the way it's going to work out.
Yeah, and we have to be able to still accept that. I think, especially in real life, like. If something doesn't work out, that's still an opportunity to yes and. Not that that's easy in those moments, but if you think about it.
Well, I mean, and not to get super grim, but it's like, we are in, there is impermanence to our,
Wait, what?
Yeah, I'm sorry. We are all going to die, Michael.
Is this a bit? No, that's embracing one's mortality.
Yeah, because in some ways it's like that's doing a scene. It's like it is like this instant birth, instant death kind of like cycle over and over again.
Yeah.
And so I think there's something just really kind of powerful about constantly kind of being in that and just kind of like allowing ourselves to like feel that like just on like a somatic level, just like constantly creating and then it ending and then just like kind of moving on from it, just kind of letting it be and then letting it go.
And we're fine with that in the improv context. It's very easy because you don't even think about it. You're like, great, good scene. All right, what are we doing next?
Right.
You're ready for the next thing. You're not going to be like, I wish I could get back to that one scene I did that one time. Like, honestly, I can't remember most improv scenes I've done in my life at this point.
Yeah.
We did improv this weekend. I can't even remember like half the scenes that we did, It's just, it's all gone.
But then, then it's funny, like in like with the real life context, like you go on a date with someone and then it doesn't go well and you're like, oh shit, I shouldn't have said that. Yeah. Like, why did I say this? I shouldn't have brought up my parents. Like,
it stays there for years.
And festers.
Yeah. Festers. Oh yeah. It just becomes worse and worse. Oh, that's very true. That's really interesting. Yeah, the idea of like how quickly we're able to move on from improv scenes and go through that mini cycle, right? Like birth, life, death, in a matter. It could be a 1 minute scene.
I think there's also something like one of the components is in terms of like what we call like characters. Like we're within that space of like playing a character within a scene. And like getting to be someone else, like we're able to kind of disassociate from ourselves for a minute. Like I don't know if you've had this experience of like going out and doing a show and just like almost like blacking out just like not really remembering the show like at all, but like you remember doing it, but it's just like the actual experience was just like you were just so in the zone and like you just could forget about the self-consciousness like of yourself as Michael, or as Benjamin, And whereas like in everyday life, it's like we're constantly looking and experiencing life through this lens of the self that
I'm always Michael. Yeah, that's a good point. And I think, with improv shows in particular, there's something special about it in that once it starts, it's just, the whole thing is pretty high flying. So you're always kind of on edge. And, something that's unique to improv that I think doesn't apply to other shows, like a play, for example, something that's scripted where you can anticipate what's next, where improv the whole time, it's just uncertainty from moment to moment. So you just kind of roll with whatever goes. And that's why I think it's easy to get out of that headspace or like not even be able to remember, because you're just like, I'm in the zone, I'm focused, even if it's good or bad.
Yeah.
You're still in it all the way. And that keeps improv separate, I think, from other art forms where you're rehearsed and memorized and kind of going in with this, I got to hit my cues and things like that. Where improv, moment to moment, it's uncertainty, and there's a beauty in that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also interesting too, when I like go and see like improv shows too, and like noticing that like inner critic of mine, like coming out of like, oh, this isn't that funny.
Yeah.
But also like noticing the need to just be appreciative of like, like they're improvising this. And so it's like what they're saying may not be funny, but it's like there is a humbling moment of just like, what, they're making this up. Mm-hmm. And that's really fucking cool. Yeah.
There's always got to be an element of grace, I think, because at the end of the day, it's like, well, I've had worse scenes than this. So, and at the end of the day, they are making it up, like you said. And that's always a challenge, Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's never like, it's always easy to improvise 100% of the time. Not true. Absolutely not true. Okay. So improv in particular, I'd say, I guess the last 7 years, being a member of Improv for the People as both, a student, now faculty member, right? Performing in a number of shows, teaching a number of classes. I want to ask about the impact of improv on your life. And I think you've touched on this a little bit, but I want to expand on that more, because you've talked about this time period in your life where post-college, you were kind of wanting to improve or maybe change yourself. And I think improv really played a role in that. What has been the impact of maybe improv or just being involved in IFTP? How has that kind of changed or shifted your life outside of the studio?
That's a great question. I would say that just the biggest way that improv and being connected with ITP has like impacted me the most would just be through my own self-expression, in just how many different ways that I've kind of just like branched out, and like how can I continue to express myself in a authentic way. Like there was, moments where I was like getting really into poetry, which was also from a relationship too. So apparently I just do things because I'm in relationships, then I pick up new hobbies and things like that.
It's a good way to get introduced to things.
Yeah.
That's how I started watching Parks and Rec. I'm not with that same person anymore.
But yeah, I think just feeling, feeling more comfortable and like giving myself more permission to express myself. Because I would say that there's definitely been an element growing up of like needing to withhold myself from others. And I think with improv, it's really just helped me kind of blossom and just, allow myself to be more expressive, be more outgoing, try things that scare me. I think just being more open, just kind of being a more open person and just, being more compassionate towards others and, it's just like this feeling of just being more open and just more relaxed. I would say it's definitely been like one of the biggest shifts that have occurred to me since, teaching and becoming more focused on improv.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that permission, you said, almost like that permission or comfortability with like being yourself or your full self too, which I think I can relate to, because as a kid, that was something I often didn't want to do, depending, on who I was with or who I was around, because for fear of judgment or just straight up like bullying or
yeah,
things like that. But I think being an adult and, doing improv, like you have to show up and do that in class, whether you want to or not, because otherwise your scenes and your stage partner is probably going to suffer if you're not able to do that.
If you're not able to do what?
Just kind of be yourself in your work, like get up on stage and just kind of open up and let it all out there, because that's, being yourself is what lets your ideas get flowing and kind of helps you start generating whatever it is that you do on stage.
Yeah.
Instead of bottling it up.
Well, and also too, I'd add like the parts of ourselves that we may not want others to necessarily see. Like the part of myself that enjoys talking in a British accent, or just like or just like being able to like be, kind of someone else that and like there is something that is still kind of connected, to ourselves when we are being other people or like other characters.
Yeah.
So it's like I like to see those as like other just kind of parts of ourselves that we don't really get to fully like express, in our everyday life. We think like we have to be this kind of like one way. I'm a teacher. I do this. I'm a good boy. Yada yada. But like, there are those parts of me that just want to be a rebel. I just want to be a rebel and just like cause trouble, or whatever. But like,
someone different than yourself.
Yeah. So I think that is so. One of my favorite parts about improv is just the ability to kind of try on different hats, allow different parts of ourself to be expressed in a safe space.
I very much agree with that, which is, I think, one thing that's just kept me coming back, and what's, again, sets improv apart from other art forms. And one thing you mentioned that I kind of want to touch on is that, this idea, right, of like, even if I am playing a character, like that character is still inspired by part of me. It's Michael's version of this or Benjamin's version of this. So like you mentioned, like a rebellish kind of person. Like the way I think about it, okay, this is time to get a little heady, I guess. Okay, so you know how they say write what you know? Mm-hmm. Okay, and we can say that improv is that you're writing on the spot. Mm-hmm. So, right, if we're both in a scene and we're both, okay, you're playing like these cool, like rebellious dudes or whatever, like you and I are both going to write like the version of a rebel of what we know or what we've experienced or, influenced by movies or books or media that we've watched. Right. But we're still going to get, there's going to be some crossover here and there, but it's still going to be, the Benjamin flavor of rebel versus the Michael flavor of rebel. And I think that's kind of the cool part of it is like, again, tying back to being yourself. If like, a performer gets up on stage, they're given a suggestion. They're like, oh, I've got to be a hoity-toity British person. And that's going to be a mixture of whoever that person is, plus like the influence. And they write that character on the spot, which is just so cool.
Yeah.
And is why again, it just goes back to, why I love improv, because I'm getting to cast myself as these versions of characters or tropes that are influenced by what I know and what I've experienced, but can be anything I want them to be at the same time. And that just, that's electric. Like that's why I'm here every week, because the opportunity to do something like that, you don't find it anywhere else.
Yeah. And I think kind of like just what you just said, is like, we all have our own kind of like our own characters, like inside of us, that it's like, your rebel is not going to be the same as my rebel. And I think that's what makes teaching both equally interesting and also challenging, because it's like, how I may play a scene is going to be completely different how you interpret a scene.
Sure.
And so it's like, I find that like when giving feedback, that's like one of the hardest things. Just like, well, this is what I would have done. But like, that's not always very helpful because you probably see it differently. So it's like finding a way to communicate, what worked or what didn't work. And then like maybe like provide like, hey, this is what I would have done, but also like just still be like, hey, you know what, that's what you chose to do. It's like, that's how you were interpreting it. And it's like, okay, how can we kind of like hone that for you? And it's different for all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think as a teacher too, it's like you suddenly have the responsibility like to remain objective almost, or like your choice works too. Like it's not just like the choices that I want to make, which can be a hard thing to separate because, as a teacher, you're in the role that like you are an experienced improviser, you know what you're doing, but you have to be able to guide people to learn how to make their own choices, not the choices you want them to make.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said.
And that's tricky. That's a tricky line to ride. Yeah, that's what I would say. I was like, whew. Yeah, thinking about it. I'm not that experienced of an improv teacher. Like I've done a little here and there. I'd say an experienced student, but being an experienced student doesn't always translate to teaching. There's a shift that has to happen, and I can teach a lot of other things, but improv is still a teaching capacity I'm developing, I think.
Did you notice a difference in teaching the sketch class you taught versus like teaching an improv class?
Yeah. With sketch, I feel like there's a little more structure to it than improv. Improv, at the end of the day, everyone has their different rules or philosophies, but it's kind of, to me, and this is something I talked about with Jamie, friend of the podcast, is kind of like those are all more guidelines, and you use what guidelines you need to help you be successful in a scene, as long as your guidelines aren't hurting your scene partner, right? Yeah, but it's not, there's not like a sworn law. Improv is loose enough where you can kind of mix and match different ideas and still have an amazing scene. Even two people with slightly different improv philosophies can come together and make an amazing scene.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But
definitely Jamie.
Yeah, it is. Jamie's like, I feel like a new age like improviser. That's how I view Jamie's philosophy in it. But I'm down with it. I'm like, that makes sense. Having like kind of tasted many of the improv flavors in LA, I'm definitely like, I think you're onto something, because every school's got their like improv Bible essentially, and like, you can poke holes in every one, and take good from each and still come out a whole improviser. That's a whole other discussion. So yeah, the difference between teaching, I guess, improv and sketch, and just for like context, I taught a sketch comedy class here at Improv for the People over this past summer 2022. And hopefully we'll have it again sometime in the future. Fingers crossed. Matt, if you're listening, you are a handsome, bald man. So teaching sketch, I think going back to structure, right? With comedy and with sketch, like you're trying to keep things very tight and moving quick. Similar to improv, you're doing things like showing, not telling. It's about the action that's happening in the scene. Today's the day. You're seizing a moment. Your characters are seizing a moment, and you're finding something funny and kind of hitting that note repeatedly. Whether that's a character, a premise, a joke, a phrase, a physical movement, But I think with sketch, at the end of the day, you're like, okay, we got 4 to 5 pages to kind of like hammer this home. We got to fit it inside these 4 to 5 pages. And there's a certain structure, you cut the fluff in a lot of things. And with sketch, I think the structure of it helps me as a teacher. I can just sit down and read something and be like, I know this doesn't work because we're not escalating here, and you can read back the lines that are written, or you can watch it and see like, hey, like we need to work on our blocking here in these moments, because we can use our blocking to add to this already funny dialogue. So with sketch, you have a process to go over the same moments repeatedly and refine and tweak them little bit by little bit. Where improv, it's like, okay, you did a scene. We can't go back and do the same exact scene. I can try and put you in a similar situation in a scene. So it's harder to reteach and refine moments over and over again, because every time you get up and perform, it's going to be different than the last. Or sketch, it's on paper. Right. We can memorize it, and we can mix in a little improv to our sketch here and there. Of course, sketch is not about being verbatim. It's not Shakespeare, but there's a structure in a different way at the end of the day. And I think just based off the experience I have, like I did a lot of sketch in college. I did improv too, but sketch in particular, I had a really great professor she was a fantastic writer, Susan Isaacs. I love you, Susan. She's amazing. She's done a ton of comedy writing and, sketch and improv herself. I think I just had a really strong example of that. And she helped form me as a sketch writer and kind of just helped give me, the tools I needed to be able to, read other sketches and see other sketch performances. And my lens is more tuned, I guess, for sketch than improv, where I'm still working on it. And I want to get better at it. No, that was a long answer.
That makes sense though. With the structure aspect of sketch and being able to kind of look at the same thing over and over again. Whereas I don't know, sometimes I love playing a game with my students. I'm just like, okay, go back and do that same scene again. And it's just like, it's never the same thing. Yep. Yeah.
It's even if you get the same suggestion, it's never gonna someone's going to do one thing slightly different, and that turns the direction.
Yeah. Or even having other students watching them do a scene and like, okay, you guys go up and you're going to go up and play these characters line for line. And it's, always goes off the rails.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's just everyone's going to have their own spin on it just a little differently. I used to, this is kind of a tangent. We're taking the tangent. There's this thing in acting, and I don't know if you've done these before, called contentless scenes, where it's essentially, and we did this in my like freshman year, intro to acting on camera class. And I'm sure, people do this in LA all the time, but it's essentially everybody gets the same script, or you have a few scripts to choose from that are, very basic pieces of dialogue, but it's the actor's job to, give context to the scene. What is the objective of my character, breaking down the beats of each moment in the scene. So you can have, it's scenes that start like, hey, how's it going? And like the dialogue is like, it's garbage dialogue. But the point is that how the choices you make as an actor, the subtext and all the things that go into it, where acting is so much more than the words.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's something like that. Like how you mentioned improv, right? Like you can give people the same lines or the same suggestions, but they're going to spin it differently. And I think that's an exercise that can be helpful in improv, because even though you're giving people dialogue, it's, any scene you do in improv too, it's more than the words you're saying. That's just kind of a vehicle to get you to the next moment most of the time.
Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, those are some of my favorite exercises to do, because then it takes the pressure off the students to think of like things to say.
Yeah.
And then it just allows them to just focus more on like tone and, their reactions and just like how they're responding, and showing up physically, like in their body. I mean, like improv it's very active, rarely, it's harder to have like really good scenes where you're just kind of standing or sitting there just talking. It's usually bored. Things need to be happening. And I'm trying to think of where I was going to go with that, but yeah, no, it's, I love kind of playing those kinds of games with my students, because then it's just about like relating, as people, and less about what we're saying and just like how we're showing up in the moment.
Definitely. And I think especially for early improvisers, it kind of removes the pressure, like you said, of having to think of things to say, where they just have to worry about, oh, well, how do I say this? And that kind of gets like their mind going, like, right? Because they're like, oh, and then now I'm going to start making choices, which is, improv is choices, right? You're just getting up there and making choices, which ties back to so many other things that we've talked about.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay. So it's kind of an oddball question, but I want to throw it your way. Do you have, either as a teacher or just as a performer, like, do you have like any improv pet peeves? Like either just something that you do or that other people, of course, very general, or like things that like Michael does that are just like pet peeves for you.
Pet peeves.
Not necessarily that these things that other people are doing are bad, but it's just that like you as like a performer, who you are as an improviser, you're like, man.
I mean, there isn't, the first thing that is coming to mind, and and this is like a note that I give like a bunch of my like beginning students, of like whenever someone says like, we've been doing this for 18 years.
Yeah.
You've been leaving your shoes on the floor for 6 weeks now. It's like those numbers mean nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I love kind of pointing out like how giving some sort of like number like that, is like a way of like not owning up to the fact, or not choosing to see this as like a new event, as like something that is like surprising. And it's easier to like kind of knock it as like, oh, you're always like this.
Yeah.
This isn't a new thing.
It cheapens the moment.
Yeah.
Because then it's, why as an audience are we seeing this happen, for the billionth time?
Yeah.
We don't want to see that scene.
Yeah.
We don't want to see something that's happened, over a period of 18 years. Like, wait, what the heck?
And then I would also add too, like, I've definitely gotten better at this as like a performer. And I think it only really applies to like people that are performing, like maybe not as much for people or like students in class, but just like being able to like keep all of the action, or like if you're doing space work, cheat it out towards the audience.
Yeah.
Let the audience see what you're doing. Cause it's like you are performing for them.
Yeah. You want to include them.
Even in class too. It's like someone is watching you do this. So it's like they're being mindful of that. This is, for someone else to experience, as like a part of it, is so important.
Yeah, it's like, hey, don't shut us out. Like, we want to see what you're doing. It's interesting. Because even just watching like simple space work, that kind of invests you in the performance, and you're like, oh shoot, what is that? What are they up to? Because you want to figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just as an audience member, you're invested. Okay. I think those are both like very valid pet peeves. And I think, especially like you said, the time one, it's like you're making your own scene worse by doing that. You're saying this moment isn't special.
Yeah.
Because the whole idea, I think, often of improv scenes, right, is like, today is the day this thing is happening for the first time. That's why we're seeing it, because this is crazy. This is an impactful moment. But when it's, a repeat of the same episode, loses value, loses meaning, loses urgency.
Well, I can see though the, like how saying a line like that of like, oh, this is like the X number of time that you've done this, as like a way to like kind of generate conflict.
Yeah.
But it is coming from a place that isn't necessarily like surprising to like this character, but it's just like, it's more just coming from like anger and like, frustration.
Yeah.
Which I think is, again, I mean, I don't want to say it's a pet peeve of mine, because I'm definitely guilty of like going into scenes like very heated and like just
100%.
like, it's just like turning it into an argument. And so it's like, that's definitely a goal of mine, is to continue to like look for those ways of like, how can I be more like open and like loving and, in a scene, versus just like automatically going to like conflict and arguing.
Yeah. Yeah. What moves can I make? Yeah. And I think, right, if I think of a scene where they're like, you've been doing this for 18 years, I think as a way, like I could see that as a performer, it's like, I'm trying to justify why this is happening. But it doesn't play that same way, And I think maybe, hear me out, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, like a move, like an alternative move to that, rather than you've been doing this for 18 years, is like almost giving an anecdote that's like analogous to what's happening, right? So you're like, this reminds me of the time you did this, where it's like, oh, like your partner just, I don't know, they dumped a cup of water on you. That's a big moment in a scene. And then you could be like, hey, that reminds me of the time you spilled chili on my lap. Like, it's not the same exact moment, but it's referencing a similar event from the past, which then kind of gives it history to why you're upset now.
Right.
Rather than saying the same exact thing happened every day for 18 years.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that is a great point, because it's like there is that sort of like context that piece of history gives to this moment, and yeah, you very much may well kind of get to that same kind of, that it is kind of turning into that same kind of dialogue and like and conflict, but I think there is something richer about it, and that you can use more of, if you're building history versus like just throwing out like, it's more complaining about like the time than actually like the event itself.
Yeah. 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 Which is like, then why are you deciding to do something today? Like 3 weeks was the magic number. Now you're mad. Like, yeah, definitely. That's a good point. Okay. So I got one last question for you about improv.
Yeah.
We're going to play some games.
Cool.
All right. So for Benjamin Roth, the improviser, the teacher, the video game trailer artiste, what do you think is next for you in your improv journey? Is there a goal that you have? Is there somewhere you're hoping improv can take you, whether personally or professionally? What's next for Benjamin Roth?
Well, one of the things that I've always kind of enjoyed in like being a faculty member at IFTP is like, getting to do corporate trainings. So like whenever Matt kind of allows us to come along with him to like do a training, because it again kind of brings me closer to this desire to bring improv into other spaces that are not necessarily performance based. And so, and like as we've, been talking about choice and, and expression. It's like, these are things that we deal with on a daily basis. And
Yes, sir.
so it's like, I feel called to find more ways to bring the tools and applications of improv into other areas, whether it be like coaching or into dating, or, into doing corporate trainings. Cause it is, I would say improv is in some ways like a cheaper form of therapy too.
I would agree. Why not both?
Why not both?
I know I do.
And yeah, so it's like, I definitely see the benefit of how this art form it's benefited me greatly. And like, I'm only excited by like the thought of like what it could unlock for other people. And so like, I definitely want to lean more into, doing more like trainings and traveling and teaching, and, maybe it means working just on my own, or, doing stuff in partnership with IFTP. I don't know. But I definitely see myself like kind of wanting to continue to take my skills as like a teacher of improv and also like bring that into like, into like coaching or like, working with other groups or communities, to kind of foster just like better self-expression.
Yeah. And I like that idea, like you said, mentioning those corporate trainings, which, by the way, if you're interested, please head to improvforthepeople.com, or find us on LinkedIn. Matthew Moore would love to speak with you. Anyway, I think that's a really interesting idea of, like you said, bringing improv into a space that doesn't normally have it. And I think, it's helping people realize that there's value in this, even if you're not hoping to be a comedian, right? I think in a corporate setting, of course, like, many companies have work that they're doing that is collaborative. They need to listen to other people. They need to work together as a team, and build together all these skills that are like, you learn in improv. And, I'd like to think I think obviously as well as you, I'm pretty sure would be like, I'm kind of an improv, like evangelical, like,
sure. Yeah.
There's something important here that, can benefit everyone, not just specific types of people. There's something here for everyone in this concept and in this practice and in this art. And like, I love the idea of that goal you have of like, how can we take this and bring it into places that might never normally explore this, but could really benefit from it?
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And the fact that we are just naturally creative beings, and like
everyone is,
this is just an art form that literally just relishes in that. It is pure creation.
Yeah.
And so I think it's like, as we continue to grow and age, it's like we need to continue to be in touch with that part of herself that wants to play, that wants to laugh, that wants to express.
Yes.
It's not just a thing for, young 20-somethings that are just moved to LA looking to become an actor.
Yeah. That's a stereotype, but
it is a stereotype.
It's for everyone. Improv for who?
People.
Wait, not improv for the influencer? Not improv for the actor who wants to book a Geico commercial?
Could be.
Yeah, it could be. Well, those are all people, I suppose.
They are people, yeah.
I really like that answer. And I think I'm very much like, that's, I think, a shift I want to make too. Because I think at different points in my life, my goal or interest in improv and what it means to me has changed. Because I think I was coming out of college very much like, SNL, baby. And, not, again, if Lauren calls, Lauren, I know you're listening. If Lauren calls, I will entertain offers. I'll have to think about it. But I also, that's not my only path. And I think there's more to it, just sticking with improv and not seeing it as just a vehicle to comedy legendhood. I think that's, for me, a philosophical thing that's changed over time.
Yeah. Well, and I think, you will hear people talk about how, like comedy and like laughter is like one of the things that, like universally, like even if we don't speak the same language as other cultures, like we still like can communicate via like laughter and like play and things like that.
Yes.
And so like one of the things that I've been doing off and on recently was, facilitating like improv sessions with people from Japan.
Wow.
That are, like learning, like wanting to learn English.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's been fun to kind of teach them some like very basic improv games,
Sure.
but like just to kind of get them to practice,
Yeah.
English and, expression.
Yeah.
When,
Connecting
especially if you're from a culture that, may not be as expressive as, as the United States.
Sure. That's really cool. We got to do a whole other episode about that.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, part 2, Benjamin Roth part 2, coming to a podcast platform near you, which is we're on every platform.
Every platform.
Every platform, even YouTube. All right. Well, thank you for sharing like your goals and kind of the moves you want to make next within improv. I think that's my favorite question to always ask, because the answer is different every time. And it just goes to show like the pathways that can come from improv. It's not just one thing. All right, sir. Shall we play some games?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do some improv. We've been talking about it. Now we got to do some. Okay, so we have a few games that we're going to be playing today. Our first game that we are going to play this evening. This game is called Adjective Scene. And in this game, both you and I are going to be given an adjective that will influence our characters. I might also give us a suggestion just to kind of help us get rolling here, because, it's a podcast improv, so it's a little different than being on our feet. So we're going to get some adjectives. We're just going to try and explore those adjectives to the fullest within our character.
Cool.
All right. Your adjective, Benjamin Roth. Surprised.
Surprised.
Okay. And my adjective is satisfied. So I'm satisfied. You're surprised. And where are we? Oh, we're on a farm.
Great.
All right. And we're just going to go ahead and do our scene. I'll black us out when we're done.
Great.
I'll never black us out. Okay. So satisfied and surprised.
Oh my, honey. I can't believe how big the crops have gotten just overnight.
Now, darling, I must say, I hope they don't get too much bigger. I'm quite content with the way they are at this time. Not too big, not too small. I might be getting a little nervous if they grow any more.
You think there's a possibility that they could grow even bigger than that? I mean, the corn is already the size as a football.
Oh, my. Now, that is a great observation, Delilah. But, we have had an amazing rainy season this year. More rain than I would have liked, but I suppose I can deal with it and, be happy about that.
Oh, my God, Marcus. The rain has been absolutely ridiculous. I was in the farm just the other day, and the entire pig pen is now under muck and filth.
Oh, well, for those pigs, I like to keep it, a little dirty, but not too dirty, because, I love those pigs, and I'm quite happy with, their lives, and I hope they're happy with their lives.
Oh, I've noticed that you've been getting quite friendly with the pigs lately, not coming into the bedroom at least 3 hours after the sun's gone down.
Now, Delilah, that is quite the accusation. Your suggestion that there could be some funny business happening in the pig pen.
Oh, so there is funny business happening. I was just suggesting you've been spending more time with them hogs than your own wife.
Well, I know I do seem awfully satisfied when I come back from the pig pen to our shared twin-sized bed each night, Delilah. But the truth is that I just love watching them pigs, because they got it so dang simple, They don't have to worry about the things that I do, and, well, gosh dang it, those pigs are happy. And I often think I'd like to be a pig.
Oh, gee, Marcus, that is such the sweetest thing I have ever heard you say. I didn't realize that you were such a softie on the inside.
Well, Delilah, I just often think to myself that, if me and Delilah were pigs, we'd be real happy pigs, all pink and mud covered, rolling around together. That's the life I'd love to live.
Are you saying I look like a pig?
Blackout! Oh man, you served up that ending line on a platter. Beautiful, beautiful. Now that, ladies and gentlemen, is an example of gifting your partner versus pimping. Benjamin gave me a gift, and the gift was a perfect button to end the scene. Write that down. All right, amazing, amazing. Ah man, I love being farmers. Yeah. And boy, did I give you a lot of surprises there. Okay.
That was fun.
That was awesome.
But even something like that, of just like having an adjective, of just like having that one thing to like kind of just anchored that character.
Yeah, your philosophy.
I was just like, how can I just be surprised with whatever he says?
Yeah. Marcus just always seeking satisfaction, and it's a simple thing for Marcus. Whereas Delilah was, man, every day must be quite a ride for her. Anytime new information comes her way. Wow. Okay. So moving on to this next game. This one's going to be interesting. This game is called Written by Randoms. And how this game is going to work is that, unfortunately for poor Benjamin here, all my lines are going to be produced by a random sentence generator, henceforth written by randoms. And we're just going to play a scene where I'm speaking from a randomwordgenerator.com/sentence.php. That's the author of my lines. And you're just going to do your best to work with me here.
Okay, great.
So I'll go ahead and give us a suggestion of, I'll give us a location one more time. Or nope, just a word. I'm going to say ambulance.
Ambulance.
That's our suggestion.
Okay. Boy, this hospital sure has been pretty busy this Halloween evening.
The snow-covered path was no help in finding his way out of the backcountry.
Hey, I mean, Randall did a good job navigating that ambulance all the way from out on 22, all the way through those back roads over that patch of black ice. He did a great job getting that patient here before they choked.
100 years old is such a young age if you happen to be a bristlecone pine.
Well, I mean, I don't know why they decided to put an old folks home all the way out there in the middle of the woods. I mean, old people should be near the hospitals.
Well, homesickness became contagious in the young camper's cabin.
Okay, well, it was my second time riding in the ambulance, and I got a little sick. I'm usually walking the wards and checking patients' files, and I'm usually not out on the road.
He went on a whiskey diet and immediately lost 3 days.
Hey, being a doctor is real hard, but honestly, being an EMT driving around an ambulance all day, that got nothing. So I totally understand the drinking problem.
The green tea and avocado smoothie turned out exactly as would be expected.
Yeah, well, St. Jude's has one of the best cafeterias in the nation. So I don't, it's without a doubt one of the most nutritious hospitals on the planet.
The tsunami wave crashed against the raised houses and broke the pilings as if they were toothpicks.
Yeah, no, I saw the damage when they came in. They were soaking wet, splinters out the wazoo. I had to pull out all of those splinters. It was absolutely ridiculous. I can't believe that they all made it.
Blackout. Oh man, my adjective was surprised in that one. I was like, good Lord. All right, but well done. I think you did a good job.
Thank you.
Those were constant curveballs thrown your way.
Those are always fun. I always loved kind of figuring out just like, how do you make this work?
Yeah, because it's not even calculated. It's just the wackiest, most random things of contagiousness in campers' cabins and everything in between. But giving it that hospital context, I think was, you played that really well.
Definitely,
yeah. All kind of relating it back to that.
Everything happens at a hospital.
That's true, yeah.
Everything begins and ends. Life begins and ends in a hospital.
Whoa.
Sorry, I
might just have to end it there.
I brought back the impermanence thing, or the permanence thing again.
Yes, circle of life. Oh man, amazing. All right, we've got this last game we're going to play. This game is called CD Sales, and I'm asking a lot of you for this one, so let's get into it.
Great.
So I am looking to buy a CD from you. You're a CD salesman, and for those of you who don't know, a CD is like it's a piece of plastic that has data on it, and you put it inside a machine that reads the data and then tells you what it is. It's, probably the best explanation ever given to a CD.
Yeah. Stands for compact disc.
Compact disc. And they were like fairly compact, but there are things that are more compact now.
There are now, yeah.
Yeah, like thumb drives, like they're more compact than CDs. They don't even spin. All right, so CD sales. So I'm coming in. I want to buy a CD from you. There's a particular occasion I'm going to want to buy the CD for. We'll find out what it is. And what I need from you, I just need some maybe suggestions of, an artist or an album, and maybe you can tell me a little bit about their music. If you want to sing or give me a couple lyrics, love it. Whatever that looks like.
All right.
All right, here we go. Oh my gosh, this is such a lovely store. CDs Plus, wow. Oh, hi, hey there.
Yeah, man. Hey, how can I help you today? Welcome to CD Plus.
Wow, I love your vibe. So I'm actually, my friend just got their food handler's license, and I wanted to, buy them a CD to celebrate the occasion.
Oh, cool. Food handler. Great. Yeah. So honestly,
really exciting.
So what I would recommend for you for a food handler, I would recommend going to the soft rock section.
Soft rock.
Looking up the goji berries.
The goji berries.
The goji berries. Yeah. The goji berries, were a top band from the 1970s.
Wow. That's a long time ago.
That is a very long time ago.
20 years ago.
And they had so many bops about food prep and veganism, even before veganism, became a real thing.
That's like, whoa, future forward thinking.
Yeah. I mean, they touched, like, if you imagine, VeggieTales, what VeggieTales did for Christianity.
It was huge. Game changer.
Goji berries did that for food handling.
Oh my gosh.
In the 70s.
That's revolutionary.
Absolutely revolutionary. Oh, I mean, they had a hit, Blend It and Ship It.
Blend it and ship it?
Yeah.
That sounds like a banger.
Yeah. It was like, blend it, ship it, blend it, ship it, it'll be there soon.
Wow. I felt like I was already listening to the CD.
Yeah.
And just, the what a like cool sound, that just gets, little earworm that is.
Yeah. That sound was actually the sound of the propane tank turning on and off underneath the food prep stations.
Oh my gosh.
They actually sampled that from their caterer.
I love a good unconventional instrument.
Yeah.
Gets me going. Wow. Okay. So that's just the one smash hit by the Goji Berries. My friend Janessa, I think it's going to be head over heels. I would love to hear, is there maybe, just one or two other songs that they wrote? Just because I want to make sure it's a good album that I'm buying from the Goji Berries.
Yeah. I mean, Blend It and Ship It, that was the one that made them platinum. But I mean, some of their other lesser known songs would definitely be, they're more like, this one's a little romantic, but it was, Are These Eggs Done? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's like, they're not talking about regular old eggs you eat for breakfast.
Mr. CD salesman.
Yeah. So, Are These Eggs Done? I mean, it was very sensual. It was like, it was, these eggs, they run. These eggs, are they done?
The last. Literally at that point, I was like, we got a great scene, but I'm just going to play a little longer to see what happens. See if we find anything. Yeah. See if we find anything. All right. Well, also, I appreciate you. There's some good songs you wrote there by the Goji
Thank
Berries.
you. I appreciate it.
I appreciate that. I was like, this was one of those ones where I was like, Benjamin can handle this. We're doing this tonight. I had this one in the pocket for a while, and it's just like, nope. I've been a little nervous about bringing it on the podcast because I'm like, it's a lot of pressure. But I was like, nah, let's do it. Benjamin can do it.
Yeah, singing, gray spacing. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, I was so close to getting up and, actually doing the dance numbers, but I was like, well, I'm not going to be able to talk on the microphone.
That's true.
So this whole thing.
Yeah. And bad radio, like the audio listeners, on Spotify would have been like, it's just silent in your footsteps, like just squeaky feet. It's like you're watching a basketball game. Like, I mean, hey, it is what it is. But Benjamin Roth, thank you so much for coming on Improv for the podcast this week. I have so enjoyed our conversation, just talking about your improv journey, your experiences, your shift from like student to teacher, and kind of the perspective you can offer on that. Because I think it's an interesting thing that we don't always get a lot of insight on. So it's cool to hear like crack into your brain, get an understanding of that. And I just love talking improv philosophy with you. Any final words you want to leave us with today before we head out?
I know. I really enjoyed the time just to kind of just like talk one-on-one like this about improv, about Overwatch, about just kind of getting to play some games. And yeah, I do very much just kind of like love talking about, improv and like its applications in like our everyday life. So it's like, and I think it's what's so beautiful just about this art form in general is just like, it's never the same. Like, every scene, every show is different. And it's just like, there's just always this like fresh and newness to it that is just very exciting. And, that just kind of keeps it, just like keeps me wanting to keep doing it.
Well said. Incredible. And that's what keeps us coming back, for the newness, the change.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you again to Benjamin Roth for joining us on Improv for the podcast. Again, I'm your host, Michael Lee Evans. And if you feel so inclined, please leave us a review either on Spotify or on Apple iTunes. We'd love to hear from you, get some feedback, or just let us know if you're enjoying the show. But until then, we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Benjamin. Improv for the podcast was created by Matt Moore and Michael Lee Evans. Edited and produced by Michael Lee Evans. And finally, presented by Improv for the People. Interested in more IFTP? You can visit us at improvforthepeople.com or on our socials, such as Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube. Remember, new episodes are released weekly. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.